Hi guys, welcome back. In this episode I'm going to continue fixing the car and everything that was damaged during the crash, as well as fit new suspension, new wheels, tyres and a few other tasty little parts. So here are the parts that I'm planning to fit over this weekend, and starting with a curtain airbag, which for some reason is M3 specific. I'm not sure why, but it had a specific part number for the M3 coupe. And the pyro fuse for the battery. I don't think this is M specific. I think this is common across the board on all the E series, and quite likely on most of the F series as well, but I'm not sure. Once that's done, I should be able to reset the safety system and get rid of the airbag lights and get them all working and functioning again. And then I'll get on to fitting the new suspension with a few other parts that go with it. Now, what have we got here? KW Club Sport V4 coilovers, which were supplied by the most professional motorsport company in Germany, Racing, and they're also an official distributor of Millway, KW, HNR, Garmin, and so on and so forth. So if you need anything, give them a shout. But anyway, back to the coilovers. These are three-way adjustable. They have high speed and low speed compression adjustment, as well as rebound adjustment. Rebound adjustment is just single. So 3 ways, remote reservoirs, really nicely put together coilover setup. And I mean, just look at it. It's really nice and pretty. They do come with adjustable top mounts, but sadly, if you want to adjust camber and caster separately, you can't really do that. So you can adjust the camber, but then if you wanted to dial in the caster, you'd have to sacrifice some of the camber because you'd have to essentially turn the top mount. So because of that, I got a set of these Millway top mounts, which do a much better job, and you're able to adjust caster and camber to the maximum without compromise. So again, a very nice and pretty part, very well designed, well made, well engineered, and it should work a treat with these KW coilovers, and it should work just really well. And it should make whoever's doing the geometry their life a hell of a lot easier, because the setup on them is just much easier than with the KW top mounts. I'm also going to fit the ball joints in the front control arms to take the bushings out and have a spherical joint instead. This should help with the steering. And I've also got these rear trailing arms, also done by Millway, machined from solid, from a billet block of aluminium. Very nice and light, very nice part, well made, again supplied by a buddy of mine at Racing. So if you need any of these parts for BMWs or any of the GR Toyotas, look him up. I'll leave a link in the description. Well, I'm measuring from here through the centre to there. So 59 ish. And then on the back, what we got? 59ish as well. Okay, that's it. Right, so old top mount. This is the upper spring seat. This is a bearing, a needle bearing potentially, which allows the top mount to rotate. Then that sits on top of that, like so. And then on top of this, you have the camber adjustment. So now that this is off, take the helper spring off just for a second. Then you've got this little shim, which essentially converts the convex shape of the damper shaft to a flat perch. So when that goes on, you can put something flat onto it because the bottom of this is flat, so that essentially sits on top of that. But with the new top mounts, it's a slightly different system. So this bearing is very tiny on the old one, where on the new one it's somewhat larger. This entire thing is a bearing. So this is the right hand side, so you have 0 camber this way, and then just over 2 degrees that way, and you've got the caster adjustment on here. So this is the one that we're going to be using on this side, and these are the sleeves. So these are the lower sleeves and these are the upper sleeves, and notice how they have a different height. So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to put them like that. So that's the upper one. And that's the lower one. And then they're supposed to go onto the shaft. The problem is that the shaft isn't long enough to use these. So there's not enough thread left to get the nut on to attach the top mount to the shock. But on closer inspection, the nut off of the old KW's top mounts is essentially a nut and a upper sleeve at the same time, and luckily they are the same diameter. So in our case, what we need to do is put the lower sleeve on, put the top mount on, and then put the nut on, and that way we have enough threads exposed, and we'll have enough thread engagement with top mount nut. So there you go, one side done, everything is bolted down properly as it's supposed to be. The compression settings are about halfway. The ride height is probably about 7 or 8 threads from the bottom, just to start with, to see where we are as a reference. The top mounts are on and bolted in. Everything is torqued the way it's supposed to be, so the bottom ball joint is torqued, the new spherical joint is torqued. It doesn't need to be torqued with the suspension in compression because it's spherical, so it can move around, so there's no bushing anymore, so you can torque it with the suspension in full droop. This is the top mount, camber set to max and caster set to max for the time being, and then we'll see if we need to dial it back ever so slightly when the alignment is done. So let's go. So this was on the rear left of the car when the crash happened, and this is what's essentially saved the car. Because the wheel is really wide and it was sticking out quite a lot, it was essentially the furthest point of the car, the widest point of the car. When the car hit the barrier, it was the wheel that's taken all of the impact, and basically the body was sustained very little damage because all of it went through here. And even though it's a forged wheel, it has its limitations, and as you can see here, it's cracked all the way around. So sadly it's beyond repair, but I have ordered another one, and it should be being produced as you're watching this video when it's released. So I ordered it just before Christmas 24, and the lead time from BBS is around March 2025, so it should be with me in a couple of months' time. It is slightly annoying that one single wheel cost me pretty much as I paid for the whole set, but I got really lucky when I bought this set, where obviously if you're buying them new they would have been a lot more expensive, and if you were buying them one by one they cost what they cost, and you can only buy them from retailers that work directly with BBS. So it's a shame because it was more or less a brand new wheel when I bought it, but it'll make a nice coffee table. The tyre itself is actually still holding air, surprisingly. Even though there's substantial damage to the rim, it's still holding air, and on further inspection I did find a nail in it, which isn't actually affecting the tyre. So I'm going to pull that out and see if that's gone through, and I will potentially reuse this tyre, believe it or not. So now onto the new wheels. These are 513M genuine BMW forged wheels, part of M2 CS Racing catalogue. They are 18-inch by 10.5J wide, all round, front and rear, ET46 front and rear. So I bought them directly from BMW as a set of 4. Sadly you can't get them in staggered setup. The rear tyre I'm using is 295/30, and the front tyre is going to be 265/35, 18 obviously. They are very light, around about 9 kilograms each. They've got massive big brake clearance, so the barrels are quite big. BMW stamping there, and the typical forged hub that you see on forged wheels, which are made by BMW, and very little balancing weights on them, sizes and part numbers, and quite a nice finish in black. Not my favourite, but because it's new it looks quite good, and I think it'll do for now. Anyway, now on to fitment. To fit these I will need to space them quite substantially, and I'm going to use these spacers that I got off of the supercharged car. They are 25mm, just in order to clear the coilover strut. So I'm going to try with the 25 and potentially a 5mm spacer, so net 30, just to see what it's like, to make sure that I've got clearance. But it's not my preferred solution in terms of spacing, because I don't like the idea of bolting the spacer to the hub and then bolting the wheel to the spacer. So in the future I will be replacing those with just a spacer and longer bolts. I'm also going to be fitting this Pinnacle flat undertray to replace what's on the car already, so the OEM stuff, which has seen better days. There's some damage to the corner pieces, there's some damage to the main bit on the front and to the vents for the oil cooler, so it's only fair to replace it and to potentially gain a little bit more ground clearance. Right, so the front suspension legs are now on. Everything's torqued to spec. That's set to halfway, so the compression adjustment, high speed and low speed, are about halfway, which will need tweaking as and when required. Using 30mm worth of spacing. This is not a great solution, but it will do for the time being, so as long as the bolts are not protruding, which is fine. But essentially I'm going to be using 10mm bolts per wheel. It's not ideal, but it is what it is. So I've got a 5mm spacer there, and then 25mm spacers here. And the reason why I need 30mm worth of spacing is because the wheels are ET46 to start with, so now we're net ET16, which is just about enough because it comes sort of quite close to the spring seat or the spring adjuster and the spring itself, so you want to leave at least 5mm space between the tyre and the rim. So this is why we're using 30mm spacer. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a 21mm hub-centric spacer and correctly sized bolts, just so I can use 5 bolts per side. Going to get rid of this spacer and still use a 5mm and stack it. So 5mm and 25mm, and then just have one bolt going all the way through the wheel and the 2 spacers. And I think that's going to be okay. Millway front ball joints are in. Quite a nice fit, all torqued to spec. Still have to torque the bottom bolt here on this side. On the other side it's all done. The drop links are not connected because the drop links that KW supplied are 290mm long, and if I fit them, the anti-roll bar hits the lower control arm. So I need something in the region of 270mm, which coincidentally is the same as what stock E46s use. So I'm going to use them. Undertray has also been fitted. These holes here are for brake ducts, so when the GT splitter goes on, we're going to run ducting up this way into the arch liner and onto the back of the disc. And then on this side it's all buttoned up as well, so it took a little while to button everything up, but everything is connected nicely and fits perfectly. I've also had to bend the power steering pipe, as I did on the Monte Carlo car. Just need to order the drop links, like I said, and for some reason I'm missing 2 bolts which go in there because they're different to the rest of the undertray screws. So I'll get them ordered as well, and the same amount of spacing on this side. Everything is torqued, it'll do for the time being, but this will need to change because I really don't like this setup. And now onto the back. So new drop links have arrived. These are the E46 drop links by Millway HD, and these are the ones supplied by KW, also Millway HD, with this part number, if you can see that. So the KW supplied drop links are 290mm from end to end, from center of the ball joint to the center of the ball joint, and the E46 ones are 20mm shorter, so they are 270mm. And that is how much I needed to get rid of this touch condition which I had between the drop link and the lower control arm just here. So this is the E46 drop link fitted, and it clears perfectly on full extension, which is the closest these 2 points will ever be. But once the weight of the car is here, that gap will increase substantially, but I still didn't want there to be a chance of the drop link hitting the lower control arm. So there you go, 270mm drop links fit perfectly. So here we are then, all done, back in one piece and straight as it can be. I'm quite pleased with how it turned out, and just glad to sort of have been able to put the crash behind me and get the car back together and go again. So the bumper with the holes, still need to remove the polystyrene here and think of a mesh. The wheels, I really like how the car sits and how it looks. The suspension's now on, the KW Club Sport V4s. It'll take some getting used to because it's super stiff. And the front drop links are on. I also replaced the outer track rod ends, and obviously the top mounts along with the front coilovers. I am running 30mm worth of spacing on the front, which I think is fine. The only thing that's not fine about it is the way it's installed. So with the spacer that's come off of the supercharged M3, with sort of spacer bolting to the hub and then the wheel bolting onto the spacer, which I really dislike. So what I'm going to do in the near future is replace this spacer with a 30mm hub centric spacer and have longer bolts essentially going all the way through, and reducing the weight and the complexity of how the spacer is set up, because I dislike the fact that there's essentially 10 bolts on every wheel. There's 5 bolts holding the spacer to the hub and there's 5 bolts holding the wheel to the spacer. So I really don't like that, but for now it's okay. I needed this much spacing because the wheels are high offset and they needed to clear the coilover and obviously sit fairly acceptable to the body of the car, which I think they do. The rear is spaced 20mm, so just going back to the front, this is net ET, so 46 minus 30 would be net ET 16. And on the back it's a 20mm spacer with correct size spacer and correct size hardware bolts. And that's the setup that I'd really like to go for in the front, just slightly wider. So 20mm spacer, longer bolts, 295 tyre, so net ET26. And again, it sits very, very nice and flush. The wheels are very light, they feel very, very nice on the car. I think they suit the car very well. Personally, I've never been a fan of black wheels, and it's a shame that I couldn't get these wheels in OEM grey, but I think after this season I will probably take them off and have them redone in the OEM grey, which these wheels came in for the road going version, so the staggered 9 and 10 setup, which you could get on the F8X cars, where the CS Racing wheels are only available in 10.5J all round and only in black. But here you go, all back together. Super happy with it. Tracking's done, it's all facing the right way. It's just had an MOT, so for my American friends that's a yearly roadworthiness test. In Germany they have TÜV, and in UK we have MOT for any vehicle that's over 3 years old. It has to have a yearly roadworthiness inspection and exhaust emissions check, or smog if you're in California. So that's just got another ticket on it for 12 months. It drives fairly straight, so all the wheels are pointing the right way. At the moment it's running 3.5 degrees camber on the front and about 2 degrees on the rear, but it's booked in to have the geo done and corner weighing in 3 weeks time from when this video is released, so towards the end of February, and that will be proper setup. So this is just interim to get me by until then, but the proper setup will be a lot more track focused with much more deeper dive into the geometry of the car. The seats, interior, all as it was from the previous video, which I've only just published, but it's been like that since the summer. The exhaust is still the same, and I know I got some stick for when I published the exhaust video when I fitted the exhaust, because I didn't do a sound check. So let me do that now. Since recording the video, I managed to remove the old spacers, which I had an issue with, and replace them with new ones. So I ended up having to stack two 15mm spacers on each side and using 55mm bolts. So there you go, guys. Another episode. Next up, I really want to get the aero on, so I'm going to get the spoiler on, try and get the splitter on, and maybe I'll put the diffuser on and see if I can address the vents in the rear bumper. Maybe I'll drop it ever so slightly, but I think until the front spoiler is on, front splitter, I'm not really going to know how low to go with it, so bear with me, but that should be happening very, very soon. It's also going to go in for full paint correction, full detail at my buddy's place, so I will be releasing an episode on that. And that's it. Thanks again for watching. See you again in the next one. I should have quite a lot more content coming out on this car, on that car, on that car, on the car that's in the garage, the 135i build. So if you haven't subscribed already, you know what to do. And yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks again. See you later.